Welcome to episode 2 of Grappling Growth. My name's Erald Krasniqi and I'm here with my co-host Joe Testouri. Today we're going to be talking about nomad traveling and the real truth behind what it's like to build a business, grow a business, and do everything else that you need to do whilst you're abroad. Now, I'd love to first get I need a location check. Where are you, Joe, first of all?
I'm actually in the heart of Australia right now, so a place called Alice Springs. It's about 900 or so kilometers away from the north and about another 900 or so away from the south. So pretty cold right now, to be fair. Not what you expect from the Australian weather.
No, I mean it's coming into. Is it not Australian autumn or winter?
Yeah, so technically the Australian winter should be kind of turning now, but it's nothing like the British winter, let's say.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And I think a lot of people don't know this, but you and me to some extent, you've been doing the sort of nomad lifestyle for a bit. How many countries have you been to at this point on your journey?
So today I've been to 6 countries in the last 8 months. So starting
Nice.
in Singapore, went over to Australia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Indonesia, New Zealand, which was spectacular. We'll get onto that a bit later. And
Yeah, yeah.
back in Australia, heading out to a few other countries in the next few months. So yeah, a fair few countries we've been to. You've been traveling yourself recently. Where's been on your list?
Yeah, I mean, I've been mainly in Europe, but I've been to 5 countries in the past 6 months. So very much centered around. I was in Lisbon last week, which was
Mm-hmm.
incredible. I'd highly recommend it, especially for if you're a digital nomad or someone that remote works. Lisbon's got an amazing business community, a lot of co-working spaces, and I mean, it's got all the things that you would need from a place in terms of enjoyment, excitement, and also really great infrastructure. So the weather's awesome, the people are great, food is amazing. It's more cost efficient than I think a lot of places in Europe too. But yeah, I've been up in the Nordics, so I covered all of the Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Norway. I was in Portugal and I've been down south I was in Greece as well. I forgot I was actually in Greece and in Albania too. So yeah, much different, but along that I've been working the whole way. So I think what I would like to also get onto today is how people perceive the traveling part, because you've been traveling in Australia and I'm sure you've seen some amazing things, right? But it's not all play. You had to work pretty hard, and with a time difference of 7 to however many hours, that's probably not been very easy.
No, definitely not. I think there's this big false illusion that painted online by these entrepreneurs, gurus, whatever they want to call themselves, that all you need to do is open your laptop, work for 2, 3 hours a day, and there you go. You've got a business that's self sufficient. Most businesses, even up to the $10 million point, are not self sufficient. They're still heavily reliant on the
Mm,
founders. And between you and I, as entrepreneurs, we're quite young in our journey. We're not close to that level. And I think what pisses me off about the internet is there's this pretense that everything's easy and you can go away
mm,
and your business will work for you. And
yep.
I'm here to attest and say that couldn't be further from the truth. I've had countless days while I've been traveling, working till 3, 4, even 5 o'clock in the morning, and then
Mm-hmm.
my sleeping patterns ruined. And I think the biggest lesson I've learned from traveling over the last 8 months is sleep is everything. And
Yep.
it is something I have not had a good temperature check on
Mm,
for the good duration of the trip. And I've really put a real focal point on it over the last 6 weeks or so, and just being very militant with not going to bed past a certain time because everything stems from that. And I think,
yeah.
and we maybe further down the line, we could get someone like Dr. Andrew Huberman once this podcast explodes, but
Mm,
he would talk about how important and crucial sleep is to our success. And where I'm at, I would definitely say that the way how this is painted out is nothing to how it is. What are your thoughts with it? I know you're doing more sporadic pit stops throughout Europe.
Well, I'm gonna say something. I mean, I don't want to say controversial. I don't think this is controversial at all, but because I get served these ads all the time, and I don't want to piss off the marketers that are doing this because I understand why they're doing it, and this is not an attack for sure. But if you see these adverts of people that are like, you can make 20,000 a month and work from wherever and live wherever you want. I'm not saying it's not possible. What I'm telling you is that you're being lied to by these people to a certain extent. All right, and I know this might be a bit of a crazy statement, but it's being exaggerated to the level where people don't understand that these marketers, and I'll explain. This is a bit of a backstory, dark secret behind the industry. Their product isn't what they're doing to travel. Their product is the travel that they're doing is being packaged as a product that they sell to you to allow them to travel. If you get where I'm coming from. So they sell you the nomadic lifestyle of like, if you want to learn how to do this, buy my course, get my ebook, join my email subscription list. And it's a very valid way of getting, people interested. You're selling a lifestyle. It's very similar to what Andrew Tate does with his Hustlers University, for example. It's selling a lifestyle, selling an image, selling a way of being. And if anything, the way he portrays himself in the media is actually just a vehicle, a conduit to get you to buy his course. It might not be overt. You might not realize that you're being sold in that way, but that's exactly what these gurus are doing. They're like, you can travel to Australia and be surfing on the beach every day and work for 2 hours and make 20,000 a month. It is 99.9% of the time impossible to do that. Just to let you know. And the only reason they are able to do that is because there's 1,000 people buying their course on how to do this for $50, and they're able to do it. But you'd have to do the exact same thing they're doing to achieve the same results. I don't know if this is what you'd agree with, Joe. I went on a bit of a rant there, but it really does annoy me when I see these ads because I'm like, it's just not how it works.
So I guess to keep this conversational, why do you think that's so unethical?
I'm not saying it's unethical. If I'm saying like it's completely valid. The only thing I have a gripe with is that the way it's being packaged isn't quite true. The fact is, it's a bit of a rabbit hole of like, if you join their course and learn how to copyright, you can make 20,000 like they are, but they're not doing the same thing. They're actually selling you something completely different under the guise of you can do it this way. And like I said, from a marketing perspective, I understand it and I respect it. And I'm not even saying that I might not do the same at some point in the future. I might do something where it's like, if I can achieve massive success in one field and I'm doing something like traveling all the time and I want to show people how I did the initial thing to get to do what I'm doing now and then use that now thing as the vehicle to make the money to keep it going. I don't think there's anything wrong with that per se. I don't like the way it's being framed, and I think a lot of people are being drawn into something that they're not ready for, and they don't really understand what it takes to work and travel and live that kind of lifestyle without, either insane hard work like you've been doing, or a massive slice of luck, or building some sort of funnel like these marketers have done to get people to buy their course or ebook, whatever it is.
I want to share a story on that actually. So I agree with all of the points you mentioned there, and no one's got me per se when it comes down to traveling. But what I will say is, if I rewind 4 years ago, so
Yeah.
4 years ago, I had a job in the city. So I was working in banking and I had Bespoke brand developers on the side. Now, while I was there, classically, Facebook ads retargeting me. I was going on YouTube, lunch breaks, commutes, back and forth to work, just consuming whatever I could. I was an absolute consumer.
Yeah.
And those ads were telling you about quit your job, start a business, grow your business. And ultimately that got me. And you know what? In hindsight, I'm glad it did. But for every, and I don't want to call myself a success, but I've been doing this now full time for 4 years. So I'd say if the proxy, if the measuring stick is sustainability and actually being consistent, then I'm successful in that way. And that's trying not to say that with any ego. But there are a lot of people who I've seen go it alone, and within, whether it be a month, which I've seen people quit instantly,
Yeah.
3 months or 2 years. There's someone who I know who recently running a business, packed it all in, has got a job now because the way how the internet, the way how people portray the way to live in a service-based business, they say you can learn an online skill and then you can go sell it for £1,000. And you can be shit at that skill. You might not even know how to use the basics of that skill. And ultimately, I think there needs to be a certain level of regulatory standards in place. So the barriers to entry are increased because there's this false narrative. And I've seen it with my own brother. He's 20 years old. He set up his own business now, a pretty cool business, a Roma or a London, pretty cool business if anyone wants to check it out on Instagram, social media.
Nice.
He's tried at 2 dropshipping businesses before.
Right.
Awful. I've said this to him. We've had conversations about it, and he's flirted with other ideas. And it's because young people, especially males, they're in this environment where they see these guys like an Andrew Tate on the internet or whoever,
Sure.
won't name drop anyone else. They'll see what they're doing and they'll say, get off your ass, work at something. And yeah, that is the right ethos. But ultimately, if, and this was an analogy that I was using today, if you're pushing a rock and it's a 100-kilogram rock, but you're pushing it uphill, well, when you let go of that rock, there's only one thing that happens to it. It falls backwards. And it's about knowing what rock to push and when to push it in your life is my viewpoint.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. The big thing for me when it comes to how these things are packaged, because I think the point you made there about the motivation that ad gave you to switch it up, eventually led to something quite positive. So I'm not saying that these marketers are doing something evil or immoral or even like ineffective. I think a lot of people actually do see these ads and use it as a form of inspiration. Who doesn't see a beach and see amazing houses and villas and partying and all that as like an interesting or exciting lifestyle? I'm not saying everyone would. A lot of people would probably see that as maybe quite boring or not what they want, and that's totally fine. But I think if you're speaking to the new age entrepreneur, we're talking about people that are either just starting their business journey or grappling with the growth, pardon the pun, of making an already established business bigger. They enjoy the sense of the freedom, the kind of like the 4-hour week, 4-hour week.
Work week.
4-hour work week. That's it. Sorry, Tim Ferriss. If you listen to this, I apologize. I've read your book in depth. But and they see that and it's like, oh, that's attainable. Like I want to work less, live more. Absolutely, totally makes sense. But I think people really need to understand the backdrop of what it takes, the sacrifices that need to be made, and what actually you will face on that journey. I mean, for example, Joe, you that's been doing this for over 6 months now. On the road, you're in a different time zone to the UK, which you initially. And I know you've got a lot of UK businesses that you work with. You've got, moving from city to city. You mentioned New Zealand. You were in Singapore. I mean, all right, tell us the reality of it. How has it actually been for you building the business as you've been doing it over the past 6 months?
So there's a concept which has rung true in my head countless times, and it's called the Tocqueville paradox, which essentially mirrors reality with expectation. And generally speaking, with us as humans, expectation and reality aren't matched up. So the expectation of going and traveling is up here.
Yep.
You're thinking, okay, I'm going to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and I'm going to smash out work for a few hours and I'm going to go off and sightsee and the weather's going to be great.
Of course, yeah.
You're going to have a really nutritional meal and then maybe check your phone for an hour on the laptop for an hour in the evening. Yeah. 2 invoices are going to come in and that's it. And then you're going to go and do whatever you want in the evening. And the reality is that anything that you want in life comes from a lot of dedicated work. And it's knowing what to push and where to push. Now, this might be different for entrepreneurs who are, and I think of it as a ladder, so who are higher up on the ladder than I am. But the reality for me looks like this. I will wake up, I will go for a coffee, go for a walk, sightsee a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and chances are the weather's going to be okay in places.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to find somewhere to go do some work. So I'll do work that doesn't involve other people. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
also probably start putting out some fires. So there'll be stuff from the day before, which
Yeah.
I'll have to catch up on because of the time zones.
Yeah.
There's been times where I'll wake up and we've got clients in LA or Texas. So I'll be up and I'll be on a call by 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. So it might take one or two calls then. And
Mm.
then come the evening, depending on where I am, if I'm in Sydney, then I'm about 11 hours, depending on the time zone ahead of everyone in the UK. And then I'm
Mm.
taking calls in the UK. Now, luckily, within the team, I'm not loaded with as much work as I was before. We've got
Yeah.
a sales guy in. He takes a lot of the sales calls. He balances that with me.
Nice.
And that has relieved some pressure because a lot of the time I was taking sales calls at anti-social hours. I mean, I had a sales call booked in at 4:30 my time. I
Mm.
couldn't take that. So the reality is you're only as good as your team and your talent. And I think if you want to go in and you want to live nomadically per se, then
Yeah.
you need to have the right talent and processes in place. And the expectations need to be there. If you have an active role in your business, then you need to factor that into your time. If you are really an owner, which not many people here are probably going to be who are listening to this are,
Mm.
then that's where you can be hands off. That's my viewpoint on everything.
100%. Yeah. I think the point you made as well, especially if we're talking to business owners that are around our, our size, our team sizes, and maybe in our industry. If you're starting getting, let's say you're in the marketing field, that's probably one thing that we can both relate to quite heavy. If you're in the marketing field, remote work and being online and doing most of your day-to-day activities on calls and that sort of stuff, it sounds easy to go abroad and do the same thing. But like Joe said, if you're in Australia, for example, and you've got UK clients, then you might have to do a 4 a.m. call. It's not going to be that you're going to be on the beach in Byron Bay suntanning whilst your team's doing all the work. It's just not going to be that unless you have a business which is completely automated and it doesn't require your time. But we'll get onto that in another episode because I think automated businesses, delegation, and a few other aspects of businesses, business growth is kind of underlooked, and it's actually the only true way of getting to a point where you can do something like that. I wouldn't say exactly that, but something like that. And go on, Joe.
And one thing to touch upon there, one of my team members said something really profound to me, which hit home recently. She said that, and there's one or two of us who have gone global that are working in different places, and she
Yep.
said that the team feel has been lost a little bit, and we
Right.
placed a massive emphasis
Mm-hmm.
on team days within central London. I mean, we were going to fun activities like Go Ape, bowling. I think for our Christmas meal, the team we all went to Dishim and then we went to go to the casino and just or
Nice.
whatever. And those are the things,
Yeah.
those are the little intrinsic motivators which get lost in the shuffle. And I think if if you want to run a business, you have to be an effective leader. And to be an effective leader, you have to lead by example. And if you're
Yep.
there gallivanting around the world and you're portraying this image as though you're this high and mighty CEO entrepreneur,
Mm.
then ultimately people, whether they want to or not, subconsciously, they do become jealous of you. And I think,
Yep.
and it all depends on the public image you want to portray. I've seen people who go around and, as you've said, they're taking videos on the beach and
Mm.
they're making out that it's 5 o'clock somewhere, wherever. And fair enough to them and more power to them if that's the way how they want to live their life. But I think there's a magnitude of people being superficial and not true. And
Yep.
I think anyone who is looking to kind of uh, go and join the cohort of the Great Resignation should really think about what they want, because going to a beach or seeing pretty sunsets, it's great, but it does get boring after a few weeks. And I
Mm.
really think what people in their 20s should really be focusing on is something they can find a purpose in,
Mm-hmm.
because you will start scratching your head as time goes on, waking up, not having anything, any mission to work towards. And I think if you are running a business or you do want to live nomadically, you have to really find your purpose within your passion. What do you think?
100%. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think people are getting sold the dream of that it's going to be a holiday 24/7, and it's not. You're doing the same thing as you're doing in the UK. You just might have a bit of sun on your face or a beach bar behind you. But Joe,
Mm-hmm.
you're on the road now, and you're having to. First episode I actually recorded when I was abroad. I was in Sweden in a cabin, and limited internet capabilities, but a very lovely setup. But it did make it more difficult. I don't have my home comforts of my home office and everything that I need to record a good episode. And we may have instances where we are traveling, we don't have the equipment, but we still have the desire and want to do this because this is what we're genuinely passionate about. And I think if you have a job that's remote, and we'll get onto another episode, remote versus the office, because I think there's one thing about the office is coming back. I don't think people realize it yet, but the office is
Mm-hmm.
coming back, and remote work doesn't actually foster what you described, Joe, a team spirit per se. You can have Zoom calls where you're on and talking to each other and everything like that. It doesn't foster a team cohesive spirit. And I know again that's controversial to say that, because I'm not against remote work or hybrid. I've been remote for many years now, so don't get me wrong. And my team has been remote for many years, and I advocate for that. I've never once had an office. I just don't think that people realize that when you're trying to build a business, if you're not face to face in a lot of regards with either your team members or your suppliers or your clients, you do lose that human touch. And without getting too deep into the topic, that's naturally going to have an impact on your growth potential, in my opinion. But I think from the travel aspect, if you have all your team remote and you want to be going everywhere, Joe, if you were able to travel the world and your team weren't, what do you think that would do for their morale? They'd absolutely be, demoralized by that. But I know you've got team members that have recently gone abroad and they're working in Thailand and they're working in different parts of Europe. So that's really amazing. But like you said, lead by example and really push the initiative that you want to do for yourself and find something that you're really passionate about. Because if you're a content writer, but you don't like content writing and you just do content writing on a beach, it's not going to change the fact that you still don't enjoy what you're doing. And you can see a waterfall every day for the next 6 months, and I promise you, the waterfall after 6 months is gonna look great, but easily you will get bored by that stuff. So I'm glad that you said that, because I don't think a lot of people realize that at all.
And there's a quote which rung true before fully deciding to essentially go backpack for 12 months, and it's from Jordan Peterson, and he said, "I'd rather be young and poor than old and rich."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
how many people? And Alex Hormozy said he's turning 34 soon, and he wishes he was 10 years younger. And
Mm,
that's the thing. Everyone who you speak to who is older, they say make the most of each moment. And generally speaking, us as humans, we place more value, we place more credence onto our future self, so our future state, as opposed to where we're at right now. We will get to that next country and we'll be
mm,
thinking about the next holiday. We'll be
yep.
having one meal, we'll be thinking about dinner the next night. And why does that happen? We're never complacent and we're always looking for the next thing, because
Mm-hmm.
there's the hope, there's the glimmer of hope that that next thing will be best than what we're doing. And I think what we need to realize, and what anyone who is looking at being a digital nomad or just working abroad for a few months, I guess it is a digital nomad, is there is a cost, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like a seesaw. So money's here, experience is here, and if you want more experience, it's going to have to go up like that. If you want more money, it's going to have to go like that. And that is the harsh, honest reality. And
Yep.
anyone who tells you that you can have both at the same time, yeah, you'll find those anomalies and those X factors. But generally speaking, there is a compromise somewhere.
Yeah, there are exceptions to the rule in any case. Like I said, there's probably someone that's doing really well working abroad, and we'd love to hear your story. In fact, like if there's someone that has been doing this successfully for many years and is making 20,000 a month and working 2 hours a day, then we'd love to hear that. I think we can only speak from our experiences. I did a lot of what I'd call long weekend work trips, which I don't actually advise. And what this encapsulates is that I do a Thursday to a Sunday, and I work Thursday and Friday, and then I enjoy the weekend in this other location. That can be fun, but what ends up happening is that that Thursday Friday can be disrupted a little bit, and the weekend is because I've been in work mode for the start of that trip, I'm actually still kind of like easing out of it on the weekend, which as someone that struggles to switch off, I mean, I'm constantly thinking about client campaigns and what we're going to do for this client next, and what what that client was talking about, and what team member has said about this, and everything else. So if I was not to say if I was to do this again, because I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing because I love doing it. But if your goal is to travel, I would say save up the money and just do a backpacking trip without work attached to it. Genuinely, if your goal is to travel and see the world, working whilst doing it isn't what it's scratched up to be. If your goal is to be a digital nomad and you don't mind the fact that you will be working hard wherever you are, you got to be prepared to go above and beyond to achieve your financial goals, as Joe said, because it is a bit of a seesaw, whilst also knowing that you will get your time to, hang out on a hammock, but it's going to be your life as is now with a different backdrop, which again, nothing wrong with that. Really exciting, and I do it, so I love it. But I don't want to get it misconstrued. Traveling and working, digital nomad is not about just being free all the time. It's going to be you work and you happen to be in another place where you can explore and do the whole see the world aspect. But that's kind of how I'd play it down. I don't know if you have any closing notes on that side, Joe. If there's anything that maybe people haven't considered, that you want to share.
Well, I kind of think of it similar to the Matrix. So you've got the woman in the red dress, and the more attractive she becomes, the higher the temptation is. So I think of the woman in the red dress as your salary. And that's why you see a lot of 19, 20, 25-year-olds traveling, is because the woman in the red dress is, I don't know, 4 out of 10. And as you get older, the more money you make, the woman in the red dress just gets more attractive. And that slowly climbs up the scale. And I think that they always say the best time to start was yesterday. The second best time is today. And I would say for anyone, even I've met some incredible people. And there was a video we put up on Instagram, the team published, where I was saying, in the last few months, I've met a murderer, which is actually a true story, at a bus stop. He told me his whole story, which is maybe a podcast for another time.
Okay.
All the way through to sitting down and having dinner with a multi-millionaire. And you hear the same rhetoric, is to enjoy the experience as much as possible. So if money is a thing that you want to be earning while you're traveling, then yeah, sure. I think just be realistic with your expectations. If you want to make the most of traveling, then you probably don't want to be working 40 hours a week, because that saps you dry of the experience of meeting people. And in my opinion, while seeing stunning and breathtaking natural beauties across the world, that's up there. I think meeting and seeing people is really, really on top of the experience of seeing people. I remember I was in Brazil back in 2018, met this Dutch guy. We ended up hiking up Sugarloaf Mountain in Rio de Janeiro. And we got to the top and we could just see the view over all of Rio. We saw the sunset. We had a beer together. And he said to me, the bond and friendship that you build with people while traveling, what it takes in a day to build with someone, or a couple of days, takes up to a year back at home. And I've still thought about that. And I was on a trip recently, met people, and they were incredible. And I think I will probably have a better relationship with them further down the line than I have with loads of people I've known for years, because there's that thing that you build when you're traveling. There's some companionship together. And I think whatever you think you can do, take away at least 30%. So if you think you can work 30 hours a week, then take away 30%, make that 20. Because that is what I think personally is realistic. Don't set the bar up here, because your expectations are going to be here. Oh, I can work 30 hours. Yeah. And the reality is here. And that's where that top wheel paradox comes in. So that's my closing thoughts.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I mean, you raise a good point. I think we focused a lot on the sort of like potential pitfalls of traveling, but there are a lot of positives to it as well. And don't get me wrong, like me and Joe wouldn't be traveling as much as we did if we thought it was that bad. Would you say that people are like I'll speak about myself. I think the thing that I actually enjoy about traveling, because you raise the whole being young and poor. I don't mind sacrificing money for experiences per se, because I will never look back and be like, oh, I remember I was working really hard and had loads of money when I was 25. But I will remember I was 25 and I was doing X and being out in this country and seeing this amazing thing. And you know, I think that's the biggest part. So the people, and I think the stories that you build, and I think this is a, I keep saying this is going to be another thing for another podcast, but one underrated part of business is the ability to tell a story. And people like interesting people. People like to hear stories, and stories are one ways that the way, like the main way that we connect with each other. Actually, from young, we listen to fables and we hear children's stories and things of that nature, and we actually connect how a story can invigorate your imagination. It can explain something in a way which is more interesting than if you would just explain it plainly. And the stories that we have, whether it's about our travels or about our businesses, they need to be somewhat interesting for people to want to listen to it. And we can definitely delve into specific stories sometime as well. But I think the story aspect for me and having this experience, because it teaches you a lot about life, it teaches you a lot about, you know, how to connect with people, what it's like to be in places that you don't understand the language, you don't know the culture, but you're doing your best to learn and get by. And yeah, those are the things I don't think can be taken away. But would you stick with the answer of people being like the main? Let's call it a pro of doing the digital nomad lifestyle, or your favorite part, at least, Joe.
I think seeing things and going to places is second to none, and it's the experience overall. I would say to top that it is doing it with the right people. I think,
Mm,
yeah, I think generally speaking, the people you meet in traveling is the best thing you get out of traveling overall,
for sure, 100%. No, I agree.
which is a nice way to kind of pitch out that. So I've got a question. So this is our section of the podcast, A Fellow Entrepreneur. So these are actually live messages and questions we get from people, which I'll be reading off from my phone.
Nice.
And this was coming from someone which is amply on the theme of hit this. So they said, I saw your LinkedIn post about getting used to different time zones working in Australia. I was wondering whether you worked until late at night, usually, or do you get up around 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning to work during the same time zone as the UK and US? So, for context, this is someone who knows me personally,
Mm.
those that we got clients, mainly UK, US. And then they just said, just curious how it worked out for you. I'm thinking of moving to Bali, shock,
Nice.
to work remotely for a few months sometime this year. And I gave them a response here. But Erald, over to you. What do you think about that fellow entrepreneur questioning?
Yeah, I mean, it's one that I think a lot of entrepreneurs have actually asked themselves, because number one, I don't think a lot of people realize. I don't know if this is his reason, but Bali has got a sort of new tax-free initiative for entrepreneurs that want to domicile there. So if you go to Bali, you can pay no tax and make use of the taxation benefits of being in the country. I don't know if they have anything to do with citizenship, but either way, again, Bali's a beautiful place. It is a hub of entrepreneurship at the minute, so a great choice in terms of a place to go. But yeah, if you're a UK entrepreneur with UK businesses, going to Bali would maybe require you to do a 3 or 4 a.m. call. And Joe, you can attest to it because you're more around that time zone. But I think the things to consider about doing the move is, okay, if you're in the UK and you're paying rent and you're in London, let's say, and you're paying a bunch of money, moving to Bali might actually be cheaper than actually staying in London. A lot of people don't realize as well. Like, you know, you could be spending a tenth on accommodation and on food and everything else, and still have a good lifestyle. So from that aspect, lifestyle, yeah, great move, worth doing it as long as you don't have any dependencies on the personal side. Because I think people
Mm-hmm.
leave that out, where it's like, well, do you have dependencies here? Do you have mortgages and bills that you need to pay and all this other stuff? And how does it work on the tax domicile aspect? And then number two is like he said that we wanted to do it 3 4 months. Does he have do you have a goal in terms of how you're gonna maintain your income or grow it, and how you're gonna do your day-to-day stuff, right? I'm sure this person, maybe they've been to Bali before. Do you know where you're going to be staying? What kind of areas you want to do? Have you got a kind of rough itinerary for what the 3-4 months looks like? Is it going to be, I'm going to be living in Canggu and then visiting the island? Who am I going to be with? Do I have any networks out there? These are all things that, like, and I'm not saying you have to do this. This is me personally. I like to be a bit organized when I go somewhere, and blindly go into a country, I don't know if it's the right play, but yeah, if you got all these elements in play, then I think you will be better set up. I mean, Joe, you can jump in here and tell me what you think, because you got a bit more experience on this side.
So, yeah, I have been to Bali. The worst time difference I suffered from the UK was in New Zealand. So I was 13 hours ahead.
Mm,
And I remember having a call at 2 a.m. And fortunately, it was a client that we signed. But I vowed to myself that I would never put money over my own health and well-being. And I've got a friend who preaches really well on this, and he actually packed up his business because it wasn't serving him.
right.
So my answer to this, the long and short, is you ideally need to be running a business that works for you and it needs to serve you. So you need to set rules and you need to say between this time and this time, this is a non-negotiable. And once that breaches that, fine. But when it becomes consistency, if a client is saying or demanding or whatever, they're saying, no, I need a call at this time. You just have to find a very respectful way to say, with all due respect, no, that's it. And if you can't find a way to say no, well,
Mm,
you might as well just be an employee for that client, because that's the reality. You run a business ultimately to work on your terms, not
mm-hmm.
essentially go in and become an employee for 15, 20 different clients. So, and this is exactly the advice that I gave to this person here, is set your boundaries, set your rules. And yeah, there is that element of hard work. I consistently take calls like this podcast episode at antisocial hours, but it's
Yeah,
the price. If you want to pay it, you pay to be able to go and travel, which overall the compromise is worth it. But I would say write down those non-negotiables that you have and decide the times that you want to work, and work out the times that you just categorically won't work. Like, I will not take any calls from midnight onwards
cool.
until 6 in the morning. That is it. I've had clients call at 1 o'clock in the morning, and that's it. If you wouldn't do it at home, don't do it here, is what I say.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, be prepared that people might not want to work on those terms with you, and that's totally fine. Like a client might say, like, listen, I need you to be available at 2 p.m. my time, which might be 2 a.m. your time. And if that's the case, then it's not the right fit. That's fine. Move on. If you're in those countries as well, I know you've done a lot of marketing as well, and a bit of a push in the oceanic market, Joe. But if you can find clients in those time zones, because if you're in Bali, there's going to be a lot of entrepreneurs in Bali that might actually need your services, depending on what you do. Obviously, maybe not. Maybe a lot of them have that already. But if you can get Australian or New Zealand clients whilst you're in that region, it makes more sense to be servicing that market than it would be the UK. Very similar in terms of setup and what you need to do. So one thing to explore. Also, when you're setting yourself up as a business and you have a team too, and this is something that Joe, again, you can probably jump in and be better with. Understand that your team are going to require you at some times. So when it's your on time, when you're working and they're sleeping, you might have to set up and schedule a bunch of stuff so that they see it once they wake up. And if you don't do that and you're like not messaging only when there's a slight overlap in times, then you're going to lose a ton of efficiency just by that.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. So I set processes in place, exactly what you've said. So
Yeah,
I will schedule messages in, depending on where our client's based, in their working day. So our policy is latest 24-hour replies to clients. Generally speaking, we're always getting back to clients the same day,
cool,
but it's just kind of giving us that small buffer. But we will always schedule messages to clients first thing in the morning,
nice.
and then also within the team, I'll be sending the team and a few tactical adjustments. So I'll send the messages just before the working day starts, so I know they have it straight away. And then any questions they have for me, there was just a protocol in place where they just need to get back to me between 9 and 10 with any questions that they have that are looming from the day before, and anything else they have, they can just build up. And generally speaking, any good service-based business is built, the foundation of it is on communication.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, bang on. The communication side of keeping in touch with your team or clients, regardless of time zones, making sure people are being serviced correctly and not making it a holiday, is important, because the mindset shift is completely different. Think about what it's like when you're actually on holiday versus what it's like when you're actually working, right? The mindset shift is difficult. When you're in a beautiful place and you're like, I'd love to go out and just have a pina colada, but you've got client emails that you need to get back to. It's not worth you dropping everything and doing that just for everything else to be missed. So 100% agreed on that front. And this the person that sent the question in, I think I'd love to hear what you end up doing, or if they have, I don't know if they've started that journey or if they're still thinking about it now. What that looks like. And for anyone else that is thinking about it, obviously me and Joe have quite a lot of experience in it. If you want us to talk more about what it's like, I've done the whole traveling remotely in Europe, long weekend style. Joe's doing sort of a longer form, ongoing, indefinite trip, would you say, Joe, where you're like kind of traveling and seeing where you end up, which I think is very cool. So if there's anyone that's thinking about doing something similar, then we're obviously here for those sorts of questions too. It's probably the last time I'm sure that we speak about remote nomad, digital nomad, traveling. So we'll definitely cover it some more.
Yeah, I think you said it really well. Not an indefinite trip for me, but a long, drawn out trip for sure. So quality in that regard.
I love it.
I think that's everything that we wanted to go through today, right?
Yeah, I
no?
think.
Yeah.
I think that's the topic covered. Thank you for listening. And if you are tuning in, listen, follow us on all the socials. There's going to be a lot more episodes of Grappling Growth coming, and we have a few guests lined up, which I think a lot of people will be very interested in hearing from. If you are interested in coming on board, our calendar's filling up, but we have a few episodes down the road, a few slots open, a few episodes down the road. If that's something that you'd be interested in doing, we will have a few more topics coming up, which we need questions for, but we may even center some of the topics around your questions. So send your questions in either on our social media channels or via our email. And yeah, I just want to say thank you for listening. Joe, is there anything you want to say to the audience?
No, I mean, you can find us on socials. So our socials are Grappling Growth, and our email is, to clarify, info@grapplinggrowth.com.
Yes, correct.
Lovely. There we are, guys.
Awesome.
There we are. Thank you for everyone who's tuned in to episode 2. If you have any feedback, constructive or not so constructive, please send it our way. We're here to learn and grow and give you the best content possible, which is the most transparent content on the internet. That's our goal.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much again, and take care.